If you're seeking asylum in the United States, then you need to be prepared for the barrage of questions that you're going to be asked when it's time to explain your case. Your testimony is the key to winning your asylum case, but you don't just get to tell your story in the way that you see fit. Rather, it's more of a question and answer scenario where the judge or asylum officer asks the questions and, well, you answer them. And with your answers, you've got to provide all the information required to make it crystal clear that you meet all the asylum requirements. This is not easy, but you know what's going to help you? Knowing what questions that you'll be asked ahead of time. And that's exactly what you're going to discover in this video. I'm going to tell you what questions you'll be asked on the day of your asylum interview or immigration court hearing. I'm Brian Manning, and I used to be an asylum officer with the government, but now, as an asylum lawyer, well, I help immigrants all over the country to secure their future in America through asylum. Let me know in the comments if you've got an asylum case pending, or you're maybe considering applying for asylum, and I'd especially like to hear from you if you've been waiting for multiple years for an asylum interview with USCIS. Okay, I'm honored to present this special training on the questions that you'll be asked in your asylum case. Let's go ahead and jump over to my computer to get started. All right, so there are 6 main things you're gonna be asked about in your asylum case. The asylum officer or immigration judge is going to ask you about 1, past harm that you've suffered in your country. 2, how what you've been through in your country has continued to affect you. 3, any threats or circumstances indicating that future harm is indeed likely. 4, what's motivating the persecution, and more specifically, whether the persecution is on account of or motivated by the fact that you possess one of the 5 so-called protected characteristics under U.S. asylum law. And now number 5, the identity of the persecutors, and especially whether they are government actors or private actors. And finally, number 6, internal relocation, which is all about whether you could be safe in your country if you were to simply relocate within your country. Okay, so now that you know a few of the main areas of interest to the judge or asylum officer, well, let's turn and look at specific questions that you can expect to receive within each of those 6 groups. Okay, we're going to start with past harm. The judge wants to know whether you've endured harm in your country that is sufficiently severe to rise to the level of persecution, as that term, persecution, is understood in the context of U.S. asylum law. Note that you don't have to show past persecution has occurred or that any harm at all has occurred in the past in order to win your case, but it certainly helps. Now, because of the way the law works, you've got a major advantage if you can convince the asylum officer that you have endured harm in the past that is sufficiently severe to count as persecution. Okay, so questions that you're going to get along these lines include, have you ever been physically harmed in your country? If so, how many times in total have you been physically harmed? When was the first time that you were harmed? And when was the last time that you were harmed in your country? Also, when was the worst episode of harm that you suffered? Now, how many attackers were there for an incident? Also, what were the attackers wearing? And what did they do to harm your body exactly? Like, what did they hit you with? And also, where on your body did they hit you? How many times did they hit you? And how long did the attack last? How did the attack end? Like, were they chased off, or did they just get tired and stop attacking you, or what? Did they ever point a gun at you? And if so, how far away were they from you when they pointed that gun at you? Were you injured in the incident? If so, what exactly were your injuries? And then, did you seek medical treatment for your injuries? And if you did not do so, well, why not? If you did go to the hospital or to see a doctor, what kind of treatment did they provide to you? And how long were you in the hospital? Do you have any records from when you sought medical attention, like, a doctor's note or receipts for payment for services? Did your injuries make it hard to carry out routine tasks or perform your job? Do your injuries continue to affect you to this day? And if so, how so? In what way? Did you report the incident to the authorities? And if you did not report it, well, why not? And if you did report it, did they do an investigation? Okay, we're going to talk now about enduring harm. The asylum officer wants to know whether what you've been through continued to affect you after the incidents of harm. And this is relevant to the past persecution analysis, showing that you continued to suffer, whether that's physically, emotionally, or both, for some time after the incidents of harm, well, it helps you to make the argument that yes, you have in fact experienced harm sufficiently severe to rise to the level of persecution. So here are a few questions that you'll be asked about this. How has what you've been through in your country affected you? Did you continue to struggle mentally or emotionally from the trauma that you endured? Do you maybe now have nightmares or insomnia or feel afraid or have other such problems because of what you've been through? Have you ever sought help from any mental health provider, to help deal with the trauma from what you've been through? If not, well, why not? And if you did seek that kind of help, during what time frame did you see a mental health provider, and how often did you see them? Has a medical health professional diagnosed you with depression or prescribed medication for you to help you handle the trauma caused by what you endured? Okay, with that, we're moving on to our third subject of questioning concerning any threats or circumstances generally that indicate whether you would be at risk in the future if you had to return to your country. You see, the immigration judge has to assess whether there's a so-called reasonable possibility that you'll be harmed in the future in a manner that's sufficiently severe to count as persecution. And as part of that analysis, they'll look to past incidents of harm, but also to anything else that indicates whether you're at significant risk going forward. And this is a forward-looking analysis based on any and all relevant evidence or circumstances that give us an idea of just how likely it is that you'll be persecuted in the future. Some questions to this end include, have you been threatened in your country? If so, who threatened you and what did they say exactly? And when were you threatened? How many times have you been threatened in total? And how are these threats conveyed? Were they in person, by phone, through a note, passed along by another person, or what? Do you have any records of these threats, such as text messages, a photo of maybe graffiti, or anything like that? What made you feel that you were being watched or followed? Have you received any summons or been charged with a crime? Do you have any reason to believe that a warrant for your arrest exists? And if so, what makes you think this? What are the charges against you and what punishment is possible if you are convicted? Now, the things that happen in your country, well, they all occurred a long time ago. So what makes you think that someone still wants to harm you now after all of this time? Has anything happened since you've been in the United States that makes you think that these people still want to harm you? For example, has anyone gone to your neighbors or maybe your family members in your country and asked about you? And if so, when? And who was it? And what did they say exactly? Have you received any threats since you've been in the United States? Now, what exactly do you fear will happen to you if you have to return to your country? Who exactly in your country do you fear will harm you? If you went back to your country, how would the people that you fear even know that you had returned? Do you fear anybody else will harm you besides the people that you've already mentioned? And if so, whom do you fear and what makes you think they may want to hurt you? Okay, before we move on, just let me say that if you're finding this video helpful, then I think you're really going to appreciate the full-length training I created on questions that you'll get in your asylum case. So the video that you're watching right now, this is just a small fraction of the full training that I put together for you. It's completely free and it's way more detailed than what you're watching right now. If you really want to be as prepared as possible for your asylum interview or immigration court hearing, then you need to check it out. So you can get this free asylum questions training by going to the website asylumquestions.com. I'm going to put that link in the video description. But again, to get the full-length asylum questions training, just go to asylumquestions.com. Okay, we're ready for the next theme of questioning. It's connection to a protected ground. This is referred to as the Nexus requirement. Now, to win asylum, you have to show not only that you're at real risk of being persecuted, but also that the persecutors are motivated to harm you because of the fact that you possess one of the 5 protected characteristics under U.S. asylum law. In other words, you must convince the asylum officer or immigration judge that the main reason you're being targeted for harm is that the bad guys don't like the fact that you possess one of the 5 protected grounds. And those 5 protected grounds are your race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and something called membership in a particular social group. And here are a few questions that you can expect about this. What do you believe it is that caused the persecutors to harm or threaten you? And what makes you think this exactly? What did they say to you that may indicate their motive in singling you out for harm? What leads you to believe that what happened to you wasn't simply a random occurrence? What makes you think they harmed you because of your whatever the protected ground at issue is? Are you aware of other people who have been harmed by the same people that you fear? And if so, what was it that caused the persecutors to harm those people? Do you have any close friends or family members who have been harmed or threatened over whatever it is that leads you to believe that the persecutors will want to harm you? Are there any other facts or circumstances that can help me understand why it is that the persecutors will want to target you personally for harm in the future? Okay, moving right on. Next up, we're discussing the identity of the persecutors. Now, the asylum officer wants to know who it is that's targeting you, mainly because whether they are official government employees or not makes a difference in the eligibility analysis. You see, there are some extra things that you have to demonstrate if the persecutors are private actors, meaning that they're not members of your country's government. If the persecutors are private actors, the officer will want to know whether the government is unable or unwilling to control the bad guys. And questions that you can expect about this topic include, are you afraid of someone in your country that is not working for the government? Do you believe the people you fear have any kind of ties to or are supported by the government? And if so, what makes you think this? Have you ever seen the people whom you fear and the police or anyone else from the government together? Do you know of anyone who has reported the people that you fear to the police? And if so, what happened? Like, did the authorities arrest and charge these people? And if so, were they convicted? And if so, did they end up going to jail? And if so, for how long? Do you have any reason to believe that the government would turn a blind eye if you reported the people that you fear? And if so, what makes you think this? What would cause the authorities to ignore a complaint against the people that you fear? Do you believe the government is simply overmatched by the persecutors such that it's unable to protect people like you? And if so, what makes you think this? All right, with that, we're ready for our final category of asylum questions that you can expect to receive in your case. And they concern a topic called internal relocation. In most cases, if the immigration judge believes that you could avoid future persecution by simply relocating within your own country, well, you won't win asylum. You see, the judge is trying to assess whether there's someplace you could go in your country and be safe, and if so, whether it would be reasonable to expect you to do so. And here are some questions around internal relocation. Have you previously tried moving within your country, like to a different city or region, to avoid being harmed? If not, why not? And if so, where did you go and what happened there? Did the people that you fear find you there? Would you be safe from the people you fear if you just moved elsewhere within your country? If not, what makes you think this? If you move to a large city, how would the people that you fear find you there? Is there anything about moving to a different place within your country that would be especially hard on you or your family members? So, for example, would it be hard for you to get a job outside of the region that you fled? Do you have a support system like friends and family outside of the region that you fled? Does anyone in your family have educational or medical needs that could not be met in regions of your country other than the one that you fled? Are there any regions in your country that the government does not effectively control, such that you could be safe there? Hey there, and congratulations on making it to the end of the Asylum Questions training. You clearly take your case seriously, and I think that you'll really benefit from the full version of this training, where I go into much more depth with lots more sample questions that you can expect to receive in your case. Now, to access that free training, the full-length training, go to asylumquestions.com. Again, the website for the free Asylum Questions training is asylumquestions.com. If you're ready to take the next step and get help with your asylum case, then please call my office today. That number is 713-909-0401. And remember, we help people all over the country, so it doesn't matter where you live. Call us now to schedule an Asylum Strategy Session so that we can help you to secure your future in America through asylum. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's an honor to serve you in your asylum journey.